Howdy, welcome back to the channel. Let me introduce you to this project of mine. This is a 1954 Ford F100 that I'm converting into a crew cab. Other people have done it, I'm doing it my way. Got some experience doing this already. I did a 1953 GMC where we did an extended cab. We've done a lot of other custom car mods, sectioning a 39 Oldsmobile and some others. I've got another project here that I'm working on in private, doing rust repair and then doing modifications on a 1949 Mercury coupe, two-door coupe. So the whole focus of this channel is I'm going to give you a little bit of background on what has happened to this truck over the last 5 years, I guess it is now, to today and where I'm going to go from now. All right, so back in 2012, I was offered this pickup. Had to go out and recover it from Levine, Arizona. Pretty rust free. It does not to say it doesn't have some rust in it. It does, but it's pretty minor. It's pretty typical on the four corners of the cab on this. The fenders were junk. The bed is junk. The running boards are wadded up junk. But it was free. So I picked it up. And it's a 54, and it's the ugly duckling of the F100 set. Most people don't even like these because of the bucktooth grill. That's why I like it. So picked it up, got it back to my shop, and it sat outside for a year, 2 years, whatever it was, until I started coming up with a game plan. First thing first was to disassemble the truck, go through, do an assessment on it. You can see on some of the body parts that it was pretty decent. You know, the floors actually looked really nice. It was originally a V8 truck with an overdrive 3-speed. Uh, Not a bad option, but that motor was long gone. It would have been all Y block. This one had an inline 6 in it with a standard 3-speed non-overdrive. And it looks like somebody was at the stage of trying to put a different engine in it to get it running again and then just gave up on the project. So what I ended up doing was disassembling the truck. I had a young kid that was wanting to do some apprenticeship with me, came in and didn't know anything about cars. I said, tell you what, give you a couple bucks, you disassemble this truck. So that's exactly what happened. He damaged a few things in the process that I wasn't really thrilled about, but it was all minor stuff. It wasn't like he destroyed half of the truck or something like that. But as we took it apart, you could see like some of the older farmer repairs. It was kind of funny to see like some of the frame damage pieces. So once the truck was disassembled, the next step was to get everything sandblasted, get everything treated. So first thing did was take the frame out, got it sandblasted, and you could really see the farmer repairs. Some of these are pretty choice. Apparently the frame did break in half at one point. You can see the bolt and hardware welded to the side of the frame to try to pull it back together, and then the really poorly welded on piece of channel iron on the inside of the frame. That's pretty bad. And actually, as I started taking it more and more of it apart, like taking the stock brake pedal assembly off, you can see the frame was broken almost all the way through in, I think, 3 different places on the driver's side frame rail alone. The passenger side frame rail at the body mount had a couple of really bad breaks in it also. So once I got my assessment of what kind of condition the frame was in, it's like, okay, what am I going to do with this project, right? So I wanted to do a crew cab, I think, diesel powered overdrive transmission, seat 4 people, that kind of, be able to pull a trailer was like what I really wanted to be able to do. I wanted to use this as a promotional tool for the shop. We were making plans to maybe do like Back to the 50s show or something like that. And I want to be able to maybe put another vehicle inside the trailer plus a lot of product and that kind of stuff. So I was thinking like a 25-foot enclosed trailer. And if I built like a heavy half-ton truck, that should be, probably a little sketchy, but I think I could pull that off. So that's kind of where I was going with the thing. And wanting to keep the overall thing fairly short so it would fit in the garage, I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. I started going through a couple of things, and I actually had a customer leave behind a 56 cab. And that 56 cab was really rough. So do not give me hate mail for cutting up a good 56 cab because it was junk. It should have been scrapped. I probably shouldn't have kept any of the parts for it, but you'll get to see exactly how bad it was. I mean, even the dashboard was rusty on this thing. Uh, the roof, I think you probably could have kicked it off in one or two kicks. It was pretty bad. So, but it gave me a pair of doors, door jams, that kind of stuff. So I could kind of figure out exactly what I was doing with the truck. Uh, Figured out that the door without the little dog leg on the front of the door is about 29 inches long. So I was like, this is perfect. This will still fit in the garage. It'll look proportional. It'll be like a double cab, not a crew cab, right? So I call it a crew cab because it's gonna have four doors, quattro porte, right? Um, so that was kind of the game plan on it, right? So I had to pick up the Libre software and it's got to going on it. I actually had some drawings for the original frame in stock on my computer files and went to town. I designed a massive X member in the middle of it, full boxing plates on front and back. Uh, I designed a triangulated 4 bar. You'll see that in pictures later. But I ended up ultimately going with an unparalleled, unequal length 4 bar with a panered rod just for space and aesthetic. The triangulated probably would have worked, but I didn't like the way it looked, and it would crowd the drive shaft. It would actually give me some uh, options problems when it came to putting a drive shaft in this thing. So first things first, right? Get the frame rails squared up and repaired. And you'll see in these pictures here, that was the whole process. I actually had to change out a section on the driver's side frame rail because there were so many bad breaks in it that I just made a whole new piece of frame rail section and spliced it in. The entire reason for wanting to keep the factory frame under this thing, or at least the frame rails, was the VIN number. I know in some states, if you don't have a factory VIN on it, they're going to retitle a vehicle as a salvage. At least that I know Washington, I think, was one of those states before, right? Uh, so I just didn't want any future problems. Plus, it's like I got the capacity to do it, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. And uh, I drew up all the parts, did some bending pieces. I actually had one of my employees do the work on it. Did a killer job and got these frame rails straight. And you can see that table is 12 foot long. Everybody would look at it, well, what is this, a long bed? When it was just the stock frame rails, just the stock F100 frame. It's like, is that a long bed? No, that's a standard short bed. So now with the frame rails repaired, we could start putting the boxing plates in and keeping everything absolutely straight. Tack welding it and straightening it, everything as we went, so we make sure that this thing is accurate. That was the big thing, is I wanted this thing to be pretty accurate and strong. You can see in here the large 10-inch tall X member. All the material I used was either 10 gauge cold rolled for like the boxing plates or the main pieces of the X member. The bottom plate is actually a piece of 1/4 inch plate, pretty heavy duty and still open. You can see in there the Hydro Boost brake system and the brake pedals and stuff going in. The stock front cross member getting fixed and put back in, that kind of stuff. So in my collection of parts that I had for this, I actually had a Dana 60.2 rear axle that came under a 69 F100 Camper Special, I think was the original date code on it. But when it came to me, it was in a 49 International Harvester 1-ton panel truck. It was like part-time ambulance or something to that effect, and we ended up doing a whole build on it. I carted this axle around for years, taking it to swap meets with a $200 price tag on it, and I had people interested in it. They checked the gear ratio and saw it was a 354 gear originally, and they're like, "Nah, don't want it, don't want it. It's nothing. It's useless. Throw it away. It's garbage." I can't do that, so I had to go through and take this thing apart, and the axles were bad. You can see from the pictures the axles were pretty well damaged. But one of the big surprises when I got the cover off is it had a Mopar style track lock in it, and it was in good shape. The gears were not bad. Uh, looked like the Chrysler green bearing style bearings on the outside with the shims and stuff to adjust the axle preload, just like a Mopar 8 3/4 or whatever. Uh, they were in bad shape. Somebody must have had one spin on it, and they welded up the housing. Uh, I knew that I was going to put this thing through some rough service, so I needed to upgrade the axle bearings. I talked to my guys over at Dutchman Axles, and they said they could build me a new set of axles, use the late model Ford 9-inch style, the set 20 bearings, and all I had to do was machine out the axle ends. So that was what I did. I set this thing up on the mill with a sketchy setup and my 90-degree boring head and all that. One of the interesting things on this axle is the center looks just like a normal Dana 60, but the axle tubes are about 3/8 of an inch, almost half inch thick in places. One piece forged. They really look like they're forged. The axle ends are part of the tube. It's not a separate piece like a 9-inch. It was all one shot. So I was able to at least center everything up, bore out the axle ends to fit the set 20 bearings, and move on to the next thing. I could start going through and figuring out how to incorporate all of this. So on my first design, after I got the axle kind of prepped and ready to go, you can see here, this is where I was trying out different axle designs, and this is the inverted triangulated 4 bar in the rear. And I thought, man, this would be kind of neat because it's simple. There's just 4 bars. There's no patterned rod or anything like that. I hated the way it looked. It probably would have worked out fine, but I'm thinking I got to run an exhaust pipe through here. I got a drive shaft that's got to go in this thing. So I ended up kind of giving up on the idea and cut out the cross member that I built. And I kept the lower bars, but I actually made a different lower bar locator on the outside of the frame. It's bolt on, so it was easy enough for me to scrap those and build another set. I actually still have the original pieces. And here's the final design that it's still in the truck today. It's an unparalleled, unequal length 4 bar. You'll notice the airbags on it. I got a set of Firestone 9000 series sleeve bags on it, but I also designed it to set up with a coilover on the back. And my intent was that I'm going to run the coilover with an underrated spring. So I think I've got 200 or 250 pound springs in the back of it, which is never going to be enough spring to hold up the back of this truck. But with the airbag on the front side of the axle, I can use that as a trim. So like an overload spring, right? And it would keep the ride quality really well. Because the one thing about those Firestone bags is they're very low spring rate. And on a lightweight vehicle, small pickup, something like that, they're beautiful. They really perform well with a good, like a Bilstein shock or a Ride Tech shock or something like that, where you can really control the axle on it. But this was my final design, and I really liked the way this particular piece came out. Axle was straightened, and it was about ready to start receiving parts. So as I'm dreaming about how this is going to look, I wanted a stock style wheel. Wheel Vintique makes a 17-inch steel wheel with the 5 on 5.5 inch bolt pattern, 7 inches wide. Oh, I think they're 8 inches now, but at the time I think these were sevens. I bought 5 of them because I want to put the stock spare tire on the side of the truck, but I want to move it to the passenger side. It's weird to me that Ford did it with the gas tank and the spare tire all on the driver's side of the truck. And it's like, man, it puts a lot of weight on that side of the truck, and it's like, okay, the gas tank, I mean, fine, sure, but the spare tire, it's like you get a flat tire, you're gonna hang your ass out into the highway as you're trying to get that spare tire off. I was like, yeah, I think so. Part of one of my projects coming up is I'm going to move it to the passenger side. It's an awful lot of work for very little gain, but it's just something that I want to do. And that's just going to be the way this whole project works out. But the wheels, caps, beauty rings showed up. Some of the disc brake calipers, you'll see some of that stuff showing up. The rear brakes showed up, and they showed up wrong from Willwood. I don't know what one of the backing plates was for, but the bolt pattern was really wrong. I bought those through Summit, and I just called Willwood up and I asked them about it, and they got really pissed off at me that I was calling them. Uh, they ended up
making it good in the long run because it was their mistake. But I thought that was kind of funny. You can see the Willwood calipers for the front. The rear axle got powder coated. All the front suspension parts got powder coated and assembled. The rear gears showed up. I put all brand new gears, all brand new bearings. I rebuilt the track lock, so it's got all new plates, friction steels in it. Everything's new in this thing. I ended up going with an upgraded yoke also. I think stock that had a 1330 yoke on it, which is probably okay, but I'm going with a little Cummins diesel. And at this point in time, I was pretty much sure what I was going to buy. I was really considering doing a 4BT with a compound on it or something crazy. And I thought, man, that's an awful lot of money to spend. And I didn't feel it. So I started looking around and I actually found what's coming up next. So in my quest to find an engine for this project, I knew I wanted a little diesel for the efficiency of it, the torque, and I just really wanted it. So this is what I found. I've Cummins hadn't made a 4BT in quite a while, and they were around, but the ones I was finding were $2,000-3,000 just to own it, and then I got to go spend another 5,000 or better going through it, putting it, refreshing it, new bearings, pistons, that kind of stuff. I was like, I'm gonna be $7,000-8,000 in putting this motor together, uh, and it'd make really good power. There's no doubt about it. But I just like, well, I just wanted to do something different. So I ended up selling a Sportster motorcycle I had and turned that money into this. It is a Cummins ISF 3.8. And there's three engines in this family of Cummins engines. There's the 50 V8 that was in the very odd Nissan heavy duty half ton truck. And they're not, from what I've seen, they're not that great. But the 2.8, the little guy, is a lightweight, and it's become very popular with the Jeep guys because it's small and fairly lightweight, and it makes really decent power with good torque. So that's been a really good retrofit engine. This one is one that was never imported. Uh, they're made in a factory in China. It's a Cummins factory there. So I had to import this and went through the whole thing. A very interesting experience. It was a lot of fun. But this thing is a 3.8 liter common rail, 4 valve per cylinder, tiniest turbo you've ever seen. But it's rated at 168 horsepower, which is not impressive, right? But it makes like 480 foot-pounds of torque at 1500 RPM. At 900 RPM, it's making over 400 foot-pounds of torque. So basically, off idle, this thing's making 400 foot-pounds of torque. That is kind of impressive. There's a company in Florida, I think it's Renegade Jeep Conversions or something like that, and they were installing these engines into the Jeep Wranglers, and just computer turning, they were getting well over 200, 250 horsepower at the wheel and well over 500 foot-pounds of torque. Not changing anything on the engine, just running these as is. You'll notice on the backside of this thing, it's got a massive flywheel housing and flywheel on the back of that. I'm not running that. You saw in the previous pictures, I've got an Allison 1000 6 speed out of a Kodiak. And then I've found a factory brand new aluminum flywheel housing. And as far as like the flex plate goes, it takes a standard Dodge, later model Dodge flex plate. The only weird thing that I'm going to have to deal with is this is 24 volt. It's a commercial engine, right? So that's kind of the game plan. I'm going to keep this truck as a 24-volt system. It's got an onboard air compressor. I'm going to run a GM LT1, the old OptiSpark LT1 uh, reverse rotation power steering pump, and that'll plug right onto the back of the I can't remember what it's called, but there's a housing on the back of the gearbox on that thing, and it'll spin the right direction and everything. And that's how I'm going to get hydraulic power to run my power steering and my hydro boost brakes. Now with some time lapse gone, it's time to start in on the body, and you can see this 56 body that I mentioned earlier. It is rough. It is really rough. Do not feel bad about me cutting this thing up because I didn't take it away from anybody. It was abandoned because the customer saw how bad it was, and he's like, "Yeah, there's nothing to build here." He went and bought a fiberglass body after that, and he's like, "You can have it." Thanks. Great. Uh, so the sequence was I took the doors off. I started trimming the doors down to the size that I was going to be using. And you can see the Bondo worms, the fiberglass mesh, just the amount of rot in these things. I'm going to have my work cut out. I'm going to be end up using all of my metal shaping skills and some that I haven't even got yet to be able to put this thing together. I saved part of the floor, saved the doors, and I ended up selling the cowl with the dashboard and everything to somebody that thought they were going to use it on their truck. They were going to try to do a conversion, turn a 55 into a 56. Good luck to them. So after I got everything cut apart and I got all the pieces that I wanted to save, I took my body, I took the 56 parts, and a couple other pieces down to Ready Strip, which is long gone now in Tempe, Arizona, and they literally acid dip. I think it's a lye bath, and got this thing down to bare metal everywhere, and I got to really see how bad the 56 parts were, and I mocked everything up on the back of the truck just to try to figure out, okay, how is this all going to fit together, right? And what parts am I going to use? My original intent was to use the back half of the 56 cab and the front half of the 54 cab, and then I would have just one seam down the middle or something like that. And it turned out, even as bad as the back of my 54 cab was, it was light years ahead of anything on that 56 cab. I used a section of floor, the battery box door, and the doors. That's all I kept of this thing. Actually, in the pictures, you'll see exactly what I'm dealing with on this. Uh, so once I kind of figured out my assessment where I was going to make my cuts and that kind of stuff, the first thing was the 54 cab. The roof was caved in. It was bashed in, like somebody's sitting on top of it, and farm truck, right? That's what you do. So I went through and broke out the planishing hammer. I actually borrowed one from my friend Ron, and because I didn't have a framed hammer at the time, and went nuts and ironed out all the lumps and bumps and got that roof looking absolutely perfect. And then I cut it up. So yeah, I just documented what I could, the difference between the 54 doors and the 56 doors. Sorry, brain farted. In the first template, you can see the cardboard template. The vertical line is the back of the cab, and there's a seam, and it arcs different. So like think of the 56 as being pre-chopped. It's kind of what it is. It's actually the roof is slightly lower on the 56 than it is on the 54. Uh, and I just wanted to pick a spot where it made sense to start cutting the roof loose and start cutting the cabs in half and then move this thing back. So that's where I started. So now, with the cabs cut in half, it's time to start putting them back together. I ended up making a die to do the rockers. I wanted to put the rockers together first, then start working on the floor, and then work my way up. Good foundation, right? One of my favorite sayings is, if you're gonna build a house, you don't start hanging the posters on the wall. You got to put the foundation down first. Chassis was done. Chassis was my primary foundation. Then we're doing the framing, right? So that's all of the understructure, getting the bodywork put together. I actually figured out from working with another customer's vehicle that somebody else had done a crew cab conversion on, and they just had the front and back body mounts on it. And they absolutely kill the body mounts because of the extra weight of the vehicle cab. So on this one, I thought, well, I've got all the parts to do it. Why not just have 6 body mounts on it? And that way I can support everything properly. So I ended up, when I drew up the frame, I actually had provisions for the body mounts in the 29 inches apart range. I ended up plasma cutting a new 10 gauge body mount structure for the middle body mounts, and I used the aftermarket cast steel uh, what do you call those things? They're those batwing arms that come up and mount the back of the cab up. So that, and then I started building the floor around that. Uh, just I used what a little piece of the 56 floor I could save, and you can see that in these pictures. It's a little rough, but at least it was cut out a lot of work for me. And then I started just putting everything together. So as sheet metal work progressed on it, other projects started getting in the way, and I couldn't finish the project. And my shop just got super busy, and then went upside down. I had some odd things happen, and the project just got shelved, and it sat for years. And I ended up selling my equipment and going to work for Phoenix Hot Rods. And after that, it was just like I kind of lost interest in the project. I tried selling it a couple times, and I just really didn't have anybody realistic about it. So I thought, the only way I'm going to get this thing done is to finish the cab and make it look like a pickup. And I thought, you know what? Why not turn this thing into a YouTube series? So I actually did start filming some stuff finally, because I know slideshows are boring, right? But I did start in first things first. I got to get the rust back off of this thing. It was in really nice shape at one point, and then for sitting for 5 years, it just turned to rust again. Trying to figure out different methods of getting all the crap off of it. The worst things was the doors. The doors got super rusty because they sat underneath one of our evaporative coolers. They're coming clean, but it's taken some effort to get them back clean again, and it's all manual. So I got to hand strip all the rust off this thing. So you can enjoy a little bit of me cleaning here, and then we'll wrap up.
All right, so after that video montage, right, the rust has kind of come back. There's been about a year has passed since those last videos. I got a lot of work ahead of me. The videos aren't going to come out super fast, but I'm going to try to be steady about this and keep producing something for you guys. No tropical vacations just yet. Or could there be? Anyway, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. I appreciate the comments, positive, negative, hopefully mostly positive. I'll respond where I can. If you got a question or something, be glad to answer that. Thank you.